All right, moving right along. Let's go to milk thistle, which also has kind of a silly botanical name. I don't know how you pronounce it, Thomas, but I pronounce it Silymarin forte or
Yeah,
Silymarin. I don't know.
perfect. Spot on. Yep.
So that's what our bottle literally says. And we have to explain to patients that this actually is milk thistle, which is very important for supporting the liver. And actually, I think also gallbladder and spleen, whatnot.
Yep.
This is a go-to for me with my patients when their liver function tests are elevated. So just on a regular, complete metabolic panel, when LFTs are elevated, many times I'll put patients on milk thistle for a couple months and then recheck that. And many times they will then reduce. So that's kind of my number one go-to, but obviously because it's helping the liver, it's helping with detoxification and it's usually very well tolerated. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, super safe, super benign. Anyone who's got liver issues, this is kind of a really good place to start. Obviously, we can find it in a lot of different products, but you're right, you do have the Silymarin Forte, which is a great product. It's a great starting point and is also part of our detoxification kits, which I know we've talked about a couple times, or you talked about with Steve. So yeah, great liver support option. Yeah.
Yay. Okay. My next product I want to talk about and spend some time on is Mitochondrial Complex, which
My
we have
favorite.
we've had an individual commercial for on the podcast, which I think just really in a short segment of time explains what it is. And I'll try to relay some of that. But basically, we like to call it the Cadillac of multivitamins. So it's a multivitamin with antioxidants, and it has these kind of three key players: acetyl-L-carnitine, alpha-lipoic acid, and N-acetylcysteine. We did talk about alpha-lipoic acid early on the podcast. And I don't remember, we probably talked about carnitine too. We talked about so many things. I'm losing track. But we're going to get to N-acetylcysteine as well later on in the show. But do you want to kind of break down why these three ingredients are so crucial to this product, kind of why we call this the Cadillac of multivitamins?
Yeah, so mitochondrial complex, I always say if you were to pull an ortho rep off the street and ask them, because we walk around all day, but if you were to ask us what our favorite product is, this is by far number one, right? This is one that I don't go a day without taking. This is one that my manager, Steve, does not go a day without taking, that his boss Matt does not go a day without taking. This is one of those that is foundational as it relates to nutritional protocols. And the reason is because I really like to use this great analogy of a car, right? Is that our bodies, it's kind of weird to think about, kind of like cars, right? We take them into the shop to get fixed and evaluated and then perform oil changes and repair parts and do all that cool stuff, right? But mitochondrial complex, it essentially treats your cells like they're little cars, right? Because inside of our cells, we have something, which is why we have a product called mitochondrial complex. We have something called the mitochondria, which a lot of you are probably familiar with or remember as from high school biology, the powerhouse of the cell, right? Mitochondria makes something called ATP, right? And ATP is the cellular currency for energy. It is energy within the cell, right?
That's what we want, a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because our body at the cellular level, we use ATP to do everything, right? We use it, I'm using it right now to talk to you, Dr. Craig, right? ATP is used to perform every bodily function that we have within our body, right? And so what mitochondrial complex does is it treats our cells like a car. And so if you look at that supplement facts box, it has, I always kind of joke, it's got A through Z. It has vitamin A, all your B vitamins, C, D, all the way down to zinc, right? It has every micronutrient that we need to build a framework like we would a car. So our car, if you think about it, it's got a chassis, it's made of metal, it's got plastic, rubber, all that stuff that's basically a platform that we add things onto. When we are able to do that with mitochondrial complex, it provides the mitochondria with all the micronutrients that they need to stay stable, right? And then from there, just like in our car, we need to put an engine in and we need to put some good gas. And so that's where acetyl-L-carnitine comes into play, is that L-carnitine has been shown in the literature to draw free fatty acids, and free fatty acids is basically fuel, it's the gas for our cells. It's been able to draw free fatty acids into the mitochondria so the mitochondria can burn them. And when the mitochondria starts burning fatty acids from L-carnitine, it creates ATP, right? But just like in our car, if I was to go sit in my car and go nowhere, or even if I was to drive around, what comes out the back? Or what comes out the back, right?
Exhaust, smoke.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And we don't want that. But our cells create that. Our cells create their own exhaust, and they create it in the form of something called oxidative stress. And most of you listeners have probably heard that term. I know I've talked about it in a couple episodes, but oxidative stress is super important because it's very simply defined as free radicals, which are unbound electrons, which can go around and damage DNA. They can damage cells. They can damage organelles within inside of our cells. And oxidative stress specifically increases aging. Right. And so cellular aging, longevity, it's all tied into that. And so oxidative stress, where do we get a lot of oxidative stress? Drinking, smoking, diabetes, prolonged sun exposure. Sorry to say it, but really high amounts of exercise. Even not great for it. Yeah. Right. Even a little bit of caffeine can sometimes do that. That's why it's a good thing coffee has antioxidants. But why we're talking about this in the relationship to our cells is that we can see the effects of prolonged sun exposure or prolonged smoking or drinking, is that there's physiological changes that occur in our body. It speeds up our aging process, right? And so, like, if you sit outside in the sun 24/7, 365, you're going to get quite a few wrinkles, right? And so if you think about it, if you can see this oxidative stress on your skin, imagine what it can be doing to your cells inside of your body, right? So it can speed up that process, which is why this product includes stuff to clean up that car exhaust. We want to make sure that the exhaust that's coming out of the back is staying clean. And so that's why we have N-acetyl cysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, which we already talked about. And then we have a whole host of antioxidants. There's something called NRF2 activators, which is kind of a longer explanation of what they do. But what they do is they tell our body to make more antioxidants as well as clean up that oxidative stress themselves. And so we have things like resveratrol, which is the potent antioxidant found in red wine, which everyone loves, right? Then we have EGCG from green tea. We've got broccoli seed extract, which contains sulforaphane. All of these are really potent antioxidants. So what this product does in a nutshell is it builds the car, puts the gas in it and says, hey, we're going to go somewhere. But as we create exhaust, it cleans it up inside of our cells. So for your body, creates energy, helps with detoxification, helps boost your immune system, improves cardiovascular function. There's a whole host of benefits from taking a product like this.
And research has shown individuals like athletes or those who are under a lot of stress, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when taking this product, they're less likely to get sick. Basically, the body is going to be more likely to conquer those stressors, those illnesses.
Yeah. We have really cool human clinical data on a formulation that almost matches this identically, that shows that it increases something called CD4 cells. And for those of you who aren't familiar, CD4 cells, they are immune cells that your body will create as a way to help go after challenges, right? So going after viral challenges or going after infections, the more immune cells we have, the better off, as most people would probably imagine, the more immune cells we have, the better off we are. So this product has been shown in human clinical data to raise immune cells. Absolutely.
This is one of the first products I put patients on who need more energy, right? So patients come into our office and we do obviously our intake and we order labs, but while they're waiting for their labs to come back, I can at least say, here, try this product, try Mitochondrial Complex. And usually they come back feeling better. So I love this product. I also take it every single day.
If I was to recommend taking anything, I know we've talked about a lot. If there was one product I'd recommend taking every single day, it's this one for sure.
Totally agreed. Okay, let's go on to Motility Pro. So another common concern that patients come to our office to that they don't always want to talk about is their bowels, right? Constipation. So for many of these patients, they do need to eat better, I shouldn't say drink better, hydrated better, not drink alcohol.
Right. Drink water.
Moving their bodies. And for many of these patients, the first go-to, at least that I recommend, is that they take some magnesium powder, not necessarily the chelate, but maybe like a powder version to help relax the bowel, help facilitate bowel movement in the morning. But if all those fail, a next go-to product is called Motility Pro. And so to my knowledge, this has ginger and artichoke to stimulate bile production, to kind of lubricate the stool and help push everything through. This can be specifically helpful for patients with SIBO also, whose migrating motor complex, or we call that the MMC, I think, is not necessarily
migrating motor complex.
As it should. So those are at least my top uses for this. But again, kind of back to you, Thomas. Tell me what else.
We also have they're essentially serotonin receptors in our GI tract, and this product is able to actually hit those, which when we're able to do that, helps stimulate that smooth muscle contraction. So the MMC, that migrating motor complex, can increase peristalsis. I know I just said a lot. Basically what it means is it's going to help your GI tract kind of literally contract and move things forward. If you ever feel like you eat and you just kind of get stuck, like things just kind of sit and they're not moving where they're supposed to, we want that motor complex in your body to move it out. It's supposed to go in and it's supposed to go out. If it's sitting there, it can feed bad bacteria. It can do just a whole host of things that we don't want it to do.
Awesome. So that's Motility Pro. Now we're moving on to N's. We're getting farther here, finally. So N-acetylcysteine is actually the next supplement on my list. So we just mentioned that N-acetylcysteine is included in Mitochondrial Complex, but let's talk a little bit more about N-acetylcysteine. So it is an amino acid precursor to glutathione, the most powerful antioxidant in our body. So for many of my patients who maybe don't want to take glutathione, whatnot, they'll take N-acetylcysteine to boost it. It also is great for increasing mucus in the body. So it's in a couple other formulations that we'll talk about in a few minutes here to help just with mucus in our sinus cavities. I also use this for fertility because it'll increase cervical mucus also. So for patients who are trying to conceive, this can be very beneficial. Why else would we use this?
Yeah, master antioxidant glutathione, it's going to come right back to that, right? Is that N-acetylcysteine is one of the key constituents for your body to make its own glutathione. And so if we take N-acetylcysteine orally, there's tons and tons of really good data on this that supports when we consume N-acetylcysteine orally, it is going to increase your glutathione levels. And you guys have, most of you have probably heard of glutathione at some point, whether it be from COVID. I'm not saying that N-acetylcysteine or glutathione cure COVID, but really good research shows that helps improve outcomes, that people who have higher levels of glutathione, their livers function a little more optimally. It's really good for your body. Absolutely. And does help with the mucus. Absolutely.
All right. Moving on to probiotics. I may just let you take this one away in that
Sure.
I know your probiotic is strategically designed with the different strains, and you can speak better to that than I can. So tell my audience why they need a probiotic.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So probiotics, I did talk about this one quite a bit on the last episode, or I think 2 episodes ago that we did. But basically why we would want to take a probiotic in the first place is that our gut, unfortunately, can be rather sensitive. And some of you listening have probably said, yeah, my gut is pretty sensitive, right? But there is a limited amount of space that these bacteria can fit in. And it's really a kind of a teeter-totter between, I'll use air quotes here, but the good guys and the bad guys, right? And what we're trying to do with a probiotic very simply is outcompete the bad guys. Because if we leave enough room for those bad guys to grow, what happens is they get to a certain amount and then they start to pump things into our system. They can secrete immunological toxins that trigger our own immune system, or they just cause general dysbiosis symptoms, which can be flatulence, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, vomiting. I mean, that's like upset stomach type deal, right? You just don't feel good. Right. So why we want to take a probiotic is just to help maintain regularity and keep things protected. Right. And so the big major takeaways for the product that you guys carry is that it is protected. There's a lot of probiotics on the market. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry just in and of itself. And so we do a lot on our end where we actually protect those bacteria because we kind of need to, quote unquote, knock them out in order to put them into a capsule because they are living, breathing, quote unquote, organisms that use nutrients.
When you say knock them out, so just for the audience, like, are you meaning put them to sleep, like freeze dry them? Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah, I don't mean we're going around and
kill them.
Yeah. We knock them out in the sense that we freeze dry them. And so in order to freeze dry them, we're pulling all the moisture out of them until they can be basically rehydrated within your own GI tract, which does happen and it's awesome. Yeah. But we need to do that because otherwise they'll start to die off very quickly. And so what we do is we actually use a technology that sprays all those probiotics with a salt polysaccharide layer that's able to go in and protect them, kind of like an M&M coating on an M&M candy is kind of the way that I explain it. Is that, if we, and I'm not saying you leave candy out all day long, but if we had something like an M&M in your pocket and it gets warm, you want it to in that plastic coating so it doesn't get mushy chocolate all over you, right? Same thing with the probiotics is it protects them. And then we also use expiration dating on our products. That's super, super, super important. Not all probiotic companies do that. Not most probiotic companies are even going to be able to do that. And the reason is that in order to put an expiration date on our product, that is an FDA regulated term. That is an FDA regulated date that they actually have to approve, which is awesome, right? Because we have to perform stability testing at 3-month intervals and then submit that data to get approval for an expiration date. And so in order for us to do that, it costs money. It's something that we're kind of eating on our end as a way to protect that product for the consumer. But, we want to guarantee that's ultimately what it is. It's a guarantee that if you take that product before the date on the bottle and you didn't, put it in your microwave or something, right? But if you take that product before the date on the bottle, that you are going to get at least what is claimed on the label, which you can't do if you don't have an expiration date.
Yeah. So I want to reiterate that. So for the listeners, probiotic complex is guaranteed to maintain that label's potency, right? What that label says. We have different I should say we have different probiotics here, but I guess the one I was referring to is probiotic complex, which is 20 billion. So it's guaranteed to have 20 billion colony forming units at the date of expiration, which you're kind of saying, so ahead of time, potentially when you buy it, it's going to be actually more potent because it's guaranteed that at the expiration date, it's still going to have 20 billion in it. And a lot of probiotics that you buy off the counter are dead before they get to your mouth.
And you do have quite a few probiotic options, but at least I can guarantee that the ones coming from our company, everything I just said is true for all probiotics, is that we protect them. We actually use an acid sensitive capsule, so it doesn't just entirely open in the stomach, so it protects it to the GI tract. And then we are using expiration dates and manufacturing with an overage. That's very, very, very important.
That's how you say that, manufacturing with an overage. Yeah. And then explain the 6 key strains.
Yeah, so I'm not going to walk through each strain because that could be its own episode in and of itself, but we are using currently the most researched strains for probiotic bacteria. There's some challenges when you manufacture probiotics because you need the probiotics, A, to be replicable. You have to be able to manufacture them and use them, but then B, they also have to have benefit to the human body. And the area of probiotics, even in the last 10 years, has been a huge area of clinical research that people have been utilizing them for a whole host of disease states, right? And so with our product, we're using the 6 most researched, specifically the Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG strain that is found in our product is the single most researched probiotic strain for human gut health, for the human microbiome. Yeah. And the reason we do that is each one of them is specifically beneficial to a certain portion of the GI tract where it's going to survive and like a specific pH, which is going to provide full broad spectrum coverage to the GI microbiome, which eliminates the need for rotating or some other things that some people feel like they may need to do.
Excellent. And I will just caveat to all of this, say that just because I've experienced SIBO, as my listeners know, especially if they've read my book, that if you take a probiotic and you're having a Herxheimer or a die-off reaction, like let's say you feel worse with the probiotic, there's a chance you could have SIBO. Yeah. So eventually you're going to need some probiotics. But if that is your reaction, which it's not, I shouldn't say it's not that common because it's becoming more common. Most of my patients tolerate probiotics wonderfully. But if you're in that percentage of individuals who doesn't, then we need to talk because you could have something like SIBO. All right. Moving right along. I didn't really think this one through, but the next product on my list is called Pro Bono, which is Orthomolecular's Pro Bono, but we actually call that bone support. So I guess we should have talked about this with the bees, but that's okay. We'll just talk about it right here.
It's here now. Yep.
So this is kind of a third multivitamin option. So we talked about mitochondrial complex. We've talked about the complete multivitamin potentially. Maybe we didn't talk about that.
We may have skipped that one.
Well, listeners, you just get to hear Thomas and I ramble today. We should probably come back to that. Maybe we can tie that into Pro Bono because, or bone support is what we call it with your longevity blueprint products, because they are similar in that they do have the amino acid chelated minerals in them. What makes Pro Bono different is it actually has a little more of the bone building nutrients. So it has formulation of, I guess I would call it blend of calcium. It actually has a little strontium as well, which has shown to be equally as effective as bisphosphonate medications in trials. It's going to have your D3 and your K2 whatnot. So maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but maybe you could differentiate the complete multivitamin from Pro Bono and kind of talk about who would be a good candidate for the Pro Bono, aka bone support.
Yeah, so both of them I do like calling the bone support product kind of the multivitamin for your bones, because that's if you look at the supplement facts box, that's ultimately what it looks like. It is another A to Z list of micronutrients specifically formulated for your bones. And so how I would differentiate the two is that the complete multi is a really high quality multivitamin, period. That's kind of full stop where we end the conversation with that one. Mitochondrial complex increases energy, has antioxidants. It's kind of the Cadillac multivitamins. I put that kind of a tier above. Love that product. That's the one that I take personally every single day. If we want to check as many boxes as possible for just micronutrient deficiencies, then the complete multi is a really good way to go. It's a really good way to to supplement, pun intended, supplement, nutritional deficiencies from our diet or nutritional deficiencies as brought on by certain medications or stress or whatever it may be, just higher micronutrient demand from the body. Right. So the bone support product kind of sits adjacent to that, where it does look like the complete multi product, but the dosages of the specific raw materials are different. And the reason that they are is that bone support is formulated specifically for patients with bone degradation issues. And so if you're someone who has a familial history of bone issues, and you can speak more to this, kind of what you see in practice, but if you have someone who has a family history of bone issues, or you yourself have gotten a DEXA scan and you know that you're starting to maybe have some
osteopenia, osteoporosis.
Yep. This is a really great option to kind of give you your best shot and give your body your best shot at having a healthy relationship between osteoblast and osteoclast. That's what it's formulated for, is to help increase kind of that pool that your body can pull from to maintain bone health. Sure.
So what bone support has in it, let's kind of break down the calcium, because I know a lot of patients look at the label and they say, well, this only has 1,000 milligrams of calcium. And the calcium packets. So this product comes in 2 different packets. So patients have an AM packet and a PM packet, just to be clear. It doesn't really matter which one you take in the AM or the PM. But anyways, the reason that they're divided in this fashion is that one packet has strontium and one packet has calcium.
Correct.
A lot of patients have been taught that they can only absorb 500 milligrams of calcium at once. And so they question this. They say, well, how could they take 1,000 milligrams of calcium at once in one of these packets? Can I hear your answer to that? And then I'll say what mine is.
Yeah, so we split them, just so people know, we split them into, you're probably wondering why we have so many packets for this, but we split them because the AM and PM, we separate the calcium and strontium because calcium and strontium actually compete for the same receptor sites. They compete for the same receptor sites in our body. And so we don't want them competing for each other. We want them to be separated. And so the calcium dose, usually 1 gram is pretty standard, I would say, for most people to get recommended if they're having bone health issues. Most people I know will absorb that and use that. It's actually dependent on your vitamin D levels, which will actually dictate how much calcium you're actually able to absorb through your GI tract. So keep your vitamin D levels high and you're going to get some more calcium through your diet even.
That's good. The other thing I was going to add to this, you and I actually haven't, I don't think ever had this conversation, but past reps
Possibly not. Yeah.
have told me at least. So for a lot of patients who are taking cheap calcium over the counter, right, if they're taking a calcium carbonate, like they really won't be able to absorb 1,000 milligrams of that at once. So a lot of these patients are told, take calcium 3-4 times a day, right? Divide your calcium through the day, and they're taking 6 pills or 8 pills or whatnot. In this product, we've already really talked about the importance of how these minerals are all amino acid chelated versions. So A, you just need less of them because they're potent, but B, this has multiple types of calcium in it. So I think with calcium, that theory that you can only absorb, 500 milligrams at a time, that's of one type of calcium. And this has multiple types of calcium, which is why they can put 1,000 milligrams in a packet that you're taking at once.
Yep. So when we talked about magnesium, that's a great point. We talked about magnesium in our reacted minerals, which is our amino acid chelate that we're actually using for our minerals. That rings true for the calcium. That's what Dr. Gray's talking about. Is a really good point, is that our body will actively absorb those. When most people think that they can't absorb a certain amount, that may be true, but it's due to the mechanism of absorption of that raw material. It's like if I took a handful of those minerals, that calcium carbonate, and I just throw it at the wall and I just see what sticks, right? Whatever doesn't is what's going to go unabsorbed. But if we bind that to an amino acid, the body sees that and says, oh, cool, I'm going to make some proteins with that. I need that. And it pulls it into your body and says, all right, I'm going to cleave the calcium off, go do your job. Absolutely. It increases absorption rates. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Can you speak to strontium a little bit too? Just how important that is for bones?
Yeah, strontium is one of those that gets overlooked. There's some misconceptions about its actual effectiveness because there's a couple studies that came out 15, 20 years ago. They're a little dated, that took a look at bone densities and said that strontium in bones doesn't do anything or did not do what it was supposed to do. But there's pretty good clinical data that supports its efficacy, especially when paired with calcium, but also separated in the way that we do. Strontium, there's some pretty good clinical data as well for increasing bone mass, especially in patients who are having bone density issues.
Sure. I know we kind of jumped to S there, so we can skip strontium later since we're already covering it. There's so much overlap here. But for patients who already have a great multivitamin, who just want to add in the strontium, we literally sell that separately. But again, the take home is you have to not take that with your calcium.
Correct.
So just to take it at a different time of the day.
It's not going to hurt you. We just want to maximize the benefit within the body.
Of course. Of course. Okay. Moving right along. Staying in P's here, let's talk about Prostatrol Forte.
Sure.
We've talked a lot about women's health on this podcast. It's not as much about men's health, but this product is a product for men's health, to be clear. So tell me why men should take this product.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as we age, and you can speak on this way better than I can, right? That's how we start a lot of conversations when we talk about hormones is unfortunately, as we age, ... right? Things can get a little out of whack. And there's some other factors that can influence that. But especially for men, what can happen is the hormone that we love, testosterone, can start shuttling off into different directions, right? And men will aromatize using an enzyme called aromatase testosterone into estrogens, right? Which is something that we need. We need to do that, but we don't want to do that too much, right? Because guys, what that can do to us is it can lower libido, can lead to gynecomastia, can do all these things that we don't necessarily want within men, right? And then it can also, through something or a different enzyme, it can turn into something called 5-DHT through an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. And that enzyme, when it converts into 5-DHT, 5-DHT is potentially up to 7 times more androgenic than testosterone by itself, which can cause prostate issues, which is why we're talking about this product named Prostrel Forte, right? Because prostate issues, it can increase, and I know there's genetic factors that are associated with this as well, but it increases male pattern baldness, can lead to men will oftentimes grow thicker beards as a result. So there are some kind of pros and cons, I guess, depending on which way you want to look at it. But what we want is for, healthy males, we want to keep that testosterone as best as we can. Mm-hmm. And what this product is meant to do is affect those two enzymes that I talked about, 5-alpha reductase and aromatase, and help push things more towards the testosterone and prevent them from going other directions. Because ultimately, as we age, that's going to help keep things, quote unquote, normal, if you want to think about it that way.
Right. Because if testosterone converts to estrogen and or DHT, right, it can impact prostate health, right? So when you have an enlarged prostate and then you're urinating all the time, whatnot, it can actually impact sexual function too. Yeah. So yes, I like how you explain that, kind of keep testosterone as testosterone and limit it converting downstream to estrogen or to DHT. So this product has saw palmetto, which blocks the conversion to DHT. That's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. It has stinging nettles. It has pygium. It's kind of similar to hair and nail support for women. And then it has some overlap with the herbs there. But those are the main ingredients. So a lot of males who have an enlarged prostate, who are urinating too often, who have elevated PSA levels, they will take this, and it can be very effective.
And zinc too. Zinc can actually act and keep things closer to testosterone as well. Yeah,
I think zinc and copper and selenium. Yeah, a lot of nutrients we need for proper prostate function. Yay.
All the more reason to make sure that we're taking a good quality multivitamin like Mitochondrial Complex as we age. Just make sure we got those micronutrients, because your body wants to keep those hormones as those hormones. We just got to give it the tools to do so.
Cover those bases. Okay. Q, I didn't have any supplements down for Q. I know quercetin is one of those, but that's in seasonal assist, which I'm about to get to.
And immune support and all sorts of good stuff.
And also R. Do you have any supplements under R that I'm forgetting? When I hear R, I think reacted magnesium.
Yeah, we got a lot of reactive minerals. We got resveratrol as the ortho label name. Yep.
Yeah, that's antioxidant support. Talk about that one.
Yeah, so resveratrol, I forget
Which
your guys'
name. I know this is confusing to the listeners, but we've renamed some of these products. So we call that antioxidant support. So yes, please. Yeah.
So antioxidant support, which also is something we'd start with an R, but antioxidant support, what that is it's a blend of the most potent, something called NRF2 activators. And NRF2 can be kind of a complicated conversation on the actual mechanism and how it works. But basically, NRF2 is this component inside of our cells that when these phytonutrients, so these raw materials that are in this product hit your cells, they send signals down to NRF2 within the cell that eventually reach the nucleus, that tells the nucleus to unwind a little bit, make some mRNA, send it out to our cells, and then create proteins. And these proteins are involved with, and enzymes as well, but these enzymes and proteins are involved with increasing antioxidant production within the body. And so as a way to stimulate endogenous glutathione production, but then also these antioxidants act as free radical scavengers themselves. So I know that was a lot. Basically what they do is you put these phytonutrients in your body, they hit your cells, and they tell your cells to basically act like little factories to make more antioxidants while also cleaning up stuff by themselves. And so if we're worried about oxidative stress, like I talked about before, drinking, smoking, unfortunately, a little bit of caffeine, talk about high exercise, diabetes, prolonged sun exposure. I named 6. I could probably name another half a dozen more. If we're doing anything that increases oxidative stress, even just overactive immune system will do that too. But if we're doing anything that increases oxidative stress, this is a great add-on. And where do we get a lot of this? Mitochondrial complex as well.
Sure. So this basically is turmeric, broccoli seed extract, trans resveratrol, and then andrographis, just for the listeners. Similar overlap, but slightly different too. I had to look that up. I can't always remember all these supplements. We have so many.
You have a lot of supplements, Dr. Gray.
All right, let's move on to seasonal assist. This is a great blend. It's a very popular product, and it has some ingredients we've already talked about today, but we use this for allergies. So a lot of patients, we kind of just passed allergy season here, although some patients have allergies year long. But here in Iowa, we're now late summer, and that'll be fall by the time this launches. But a lot of signs and symptoms of allergies are things like fever and headaches and swelling of your nasal passages, tenderness of the sinuses, nasal congestion, even bad breath at times. And so a lot of individuals, including yourself, who has some
I've
allergies
said this before. Yeah.
have taken some medications, things like over-the-counter antihistamines, even anti-inflammatories. Some patients need decongestants and steroids. And these interventions, right, that conventional medicine can offer us do offer some relief, but they don't always correct the underlying root cause of the problem. This product, however, can correct that underlying cause of the problem. So tell me the ingredients in this product and why this is so powerful.
Yeah, and oftentimes with those OTC things, it's not even a case that they don't address root cause, but sometimes they just don't work.
And
Right.
have side effects. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got allergies pretty bad. Dr. Gray knows that I talk about it all the time, but I've got pretty bad allergies. And I can even tell you from personal experience, those OTC medications, it almost feels like it depends on the day which one works the best. And I know that for me, it's Claritin, loratadine, that works the best, and the other ones don't really touch it. And even then, it's not a perfect scenario. Right. And it's the same for most of the listeners. If you guys have allergies, you know this, you've gone through the trial periods, and some years it seems like one doesn't work and one does, right? So what this product is meant to do is, in our body, we have these cells called mast cells. And mast cells line things like our respiratory tract and line portions of our GI tract. They're found within sensitive areas of our body. And what they do is they're waiting for these little pollen molecules to be grabbed by our body and brought to these cells. The body just does this, which is really not cool, in my opinion. But the body grabs this pollen and brings it to these cells. And these cells are like little water balloons. But instead of a fun backyard party, what we're doing with these water balloons is they're full of junk. They're full of pro-inflammatory molecules. And one of these, there's over 30 plus molecules in these mast cells. But one of these molecules, one of these compounds is histamine. And so when these pollen molecules get brought to the mast cells, they break open. It's like a little needle came along and just pop, right? These water balloons just burst open. What happens is they dump their junk into your system, and then we have histamine floating around. That hits a histamine receptor, and it triggers those, we call them clinical manifestations, where things are actually presenting. But that's when you wake up and you're like, oh my God, my eyes are bloodshot and I've got stuffy nose and everything's all irritated and I don't feel good. That's that pathophysiology, right? And so what this product does is I don't like saying our products have main ingredients, but kind of the main ingredient in this product is quercetin. And so quercetin, where we see it as an antioxidant, but also an anti-inflammatory, comes in, and it's actually a mast cell stabilizer. And so what that means for the listeners is it actually prevents that needle from hitting the water balloon. The mast cell is still there, but it kind of takes the needle away. And
so it doesn't explode. Yeah.
Yes, Yep. So we don't get histamine. Instead of dealing with histamine receptors, and this is why sometimes they don't work, and instead of dealing with the receptors and just kind of hoping, right, that the histamine just is caught in time and it doesn't hit enough cells and there's not a problem, that we're preventing histamine from being released in the first place. And then in addition to that, we have anti-inflammatories in this product, right? So we're going to have things like bromelain, which is also an anti-inflammatory, stinging nettles leaf, also anti-inflammatory. And then we're also going to include some things to act as mucolytics. And so bromelain comes back. That's an enzyme from pineapples. What it does is it actually goes after protein bonds in mucus, which lowers their viscosity. So if you ever get mucus, I know it's kind of gross, but you get mucus stuck in your sinuses and it doesn't want to go anywhere, that's no fun, very uncomfortable. Or N-acetyl cysteine, also in this product. In addition to being a really good antioxidant to help our immune system, it also is able to break up something called disulfide bonds in mucus, which lowers the viscosity. So two different mechanisms happening to lower the viscosity of mucus, which means mucus is going to clear out easier. Again,
it
gross.
makes it thinner. When you're saying like viscosity, and just for the listeners. So what he's saying is that it will thin out.
It's basically, it's kind of gross, but it means we're basically taking it from maple syrup to water. I know that's kind of gross, but we're taking it from that thick, gloopy stuff that just is not fun. I don't even like talking about it, right? But we're able to break it down. So when we actually go to blow our nose, it comes out like water. It's much, much, much easier, much, much, much runnier, which is a good thing because it's going to help you breathe. And keep those sinuses clean. Yeah.
So this is just such an important product. And I love that analogy. So just remember this product, seasonal assist. Yes, it's going to thin your secretions. It's going to break down the bonds in the thick mucus, right? But it's stabilizing the mast cell. So the mast cell doesn't explode. If the mast cell doesn't explode, it's not going to release histamine. So you're not going to have a need for antihistamines. It's not going to release leukotriene. So you don't have a need for Singulair. It's not going to release, hopefully, inflammatory mediators. So you don't need anti-inflammatories, right? So if we can prevent the mast cell from exploding, we're theoretically preventing that whole allergenic cascade from happening. So the deal with
if anybody
Oh, go ahead.
So sorry, if anybody's wondering, if you're saying, man, I got allergies just like this Thomas guy, and I'm wondering if this product actually works. We make 180 products. This is our #2 best-selling product. We
Yep.
sell more DHIS than we sell 170-ish other products. It really, it's very effective for your allergies. Very effective.
But for it to work, you do have to load up. You need to get levels of
Yep.
quercetin high enough in your blood that it is going
Yep.
to actually act to stabilize the mast cells. So the loading dose, so if you know, your allergy season is starting, you got to take the
Mhm.
loading dose, which is 2, 3 times a day for a week, which sounds like a lot, but many of my patients get by then from a maintenance
Yeah.
standpoint on just 1 or 2 per day. And if the
Yeah.
pollen count's really high and you're really struggling, you could take more, but most patients get
Yep.
by taking 1 or 2 per day, and then eventually they're able to wean off some of their other allergy medications.
Yeah. You
So
just got to load up. And that's a good point. You can take this simultaneously. You can take it at the same time that you're taking other medications, right? So you can keep doing your Claritin, keep doing your Allegra, but then add on seasonal assist, get that loading dose under control, and then kind of do maybe an every other day, every few days on the OTC, to the point where your allergies are effectively managed. And we've just transitioned to a healthier and a more natural option.
let's follow up on that with the next product in the S's, which is sinus support. So
Yeah.
sinus support is also very important. Now, should you have allergies that then develop into a sinus infection, this product is amazing. And so the way that I was at least trained on this product, we'll see if I can remember this, is that it has a
Got it.
four-pronged approach for our health. So we've already talked about the benefits of N-acetylcysteine several times here, right? So this product also has N-acetylcysteine, which is that natural mucolytic, kind of like Mucinex, to thin your secretions so you can more easily get them out. It also has turmeric, which is a natural anti-inflammatory, kind of like ibuprofen, to open up your airways. It has berberine and thyme, which are natural antifungal herbs that are going to hit fungus in the nasal passages, because there was like 1998, was that the year?
Mayo Clinic study. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mayo Clinic studies show that they had biopsied like 200 patients with chronic sinusitis, sinus cavities, and showed that all those patients had bacteria and viruses and yeast essentially in those
Those
cavities.
patients, those 200 plus, qualified for surgery. That's what the
They
next
were
step
so
was.
bad. Sure.
Yes. It was 90+% had fungal secretions, positive fungal secretions within their sinus cavities, who otherwise were due for surgery. That was the next step for them. And I'm
And I
good. I
would
can
say
speak
who,
personally on this. Yeah, I'm good for 2 of these a year, sinus infections.
yeah. So most
Yeah.
patients, if you're listening and you've had a sinus infection, you're treated with antibiotics, and sometimes that's appropriate, but sometimes it's not. And so again, based on that landmark Mayo Clinic study, this product was created to say, hey, let's also address that yeast, that fungus component. So this has some herbs that act as natural antifungals, and it has some herbal immune boosters, things like Eleutherococcus, which is Siberian ginseng, and Andrographis. But this is a product that you wouldn't take year round. You take this as needed for sinus infection, and the dose is 3 per day. I've had patients take more, but I usually say you can take it for about a week, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
if symptoms are progressing, you may need further treatment with drugs, but many of my patients can avoid use of drugs when they're on the seasonal cyst and or the sinus support. So what else? What did I miss on that? Did I get that right?
That was perfect. Yeah. Occasionally I will load up on this one. I'll even do 3 capsules, sometimes 3 times a day,
Yeah,
just to get
you
some
really
additional
need to,
support.
sure.
You can kind of shotgun it. Yeah.
Yep, it's very helpful. Patients tend to love this. I will say, just since we're on the topic of sinus infections, we also
Yeah.
carry a silver nasal spray here. So
Mhm.
silver itself, which I think I forgot to put on the list, we just have so many supplements, was antibacterial,
We keep
antifungal,
remembering it as we're going. Yeah.
antiviral. It can be used in almost any orifice in the body, including up your sinuses. So you can certainly spray silver into those passages also to help treat a sinus infection. I'm going to go back for a second. I guess selenium should have alphabetically come before sinus support, but I wanted to piggyback, that product after seasonal cyst. So let's talk about selenium real quick, just individually, and then it's also part of a thyroid support complex that we have too.
Mhm.
So what do we use selenium for?
We use selenium for quite a few different things. It's involved in some pretty complex processes that involve glutathione recycling within the body as a way to support, kind of indirectly, but also very much directly, the conversion of thyroid hormones within the body. So turning our T4 into T3, our T3, but not our T3. Converting T4 into T3, which is going to be essentially, if you want to think about it, if people are like, what are you talking about? T3 is active thyroid hormone. That's the thyroid hormone that goes around and hits our cells and tells our cells to do thyroid related things, which is essentially metabolism.
Yeah.
Right. So you can speak way more on that than I can, because I'm sure you see hundreds of these patients, every single month. But selenium is involved in the process of converting the T4 to T3, and also recycling our glutathione within our body. It's super, super, super important.
Great for immune function. And it also,
Yeah.
well, along that note, I think that's partially why it helps reduce thyroid antibodies as well. So Isabella once talks a lot about the importance of selenium for thyroid health, like you were just mentioning, for the conversion, right, of T4 to T3, but also for reducing thyroid peroxidase antibodies. So if you have autoimmune thyroid disease and you've had those checked and they're elevated, selenium could be very helpful to lower those.
And those are those TPO antibodies if you guys are thinking about your lab test. Yeah.
Exactly. Before we get to the T's for the thyroid support complex, I do want to spend a little bit of time on SBIGG, which is one of my other favorite products that I do take every single day. So, Thomas, explain to us why this product is just so important.
Yeah, we love this one, especially being here in Iowa. Shout out to Brian Kaufman and his team over at InterraHealth and Proliant Biologics that are making this for us. But this raw material, what it is in a very interesting way is that cows, we're talking about cattle here, have the ability to, when they interact with different microbes and different organisms within their environment, their immune system starts creating these things called immunoglobulins. And so these immunoglobulins are able to, because we want them to do this, are able to bind to specific components and remove them from our body, right? So what we're talking about with SBIGG is we're talking specifically about one type of immunoglobulin called IgG. And IgG, when we send it through our GI tract, when we consume it orally, what happens is it stays in our GI tract and finds little microbes and little components of these nasty bacteria that have died or have released into our system, binds to them. So it's able to physically latch on, and vice versa. They latch on to the IgG and vice versa. And essentially what happens is it washes them out. You literally flush them out of your system. You're probably saying, why is this important? Is that there's 80%-ish, I've heard numbers 70 to 80% of our own immune system is housed in our gut. And what am I talking about when I'm talking about our immune system? I'm talking about things like dendritic cells and macrophages. We call these antigen presenting cells. What these are, I kind of described it as a little kelp in the ocean, right? Is that our GI tract is essentially an interface with the outside world. And what we want is we want these dendritic cells sitting there and grabbing on and sensing the information. They want to go out and they want to test things to say, are you our friend or are you a problem, right? And if they grab onto something in our gut that is a problem, what they're going to do is alert the immune system. And the immune system is going to have a reaction to that. And then it is going to increase inflammation. And so if we have GI issues, if we have inflammatory issues, if we have those elsewhere, if we have immune or inflammatory issues elsewhere in the body, where this starts, where this begins, is it begins in our GI tract. And so what SBIGG does is it binds to all the stuff that the dendritic cells and macrophages are looking for. And I'm talking about mostly the bad things, in fact, entirely the bad things. And it binds to these quote unquote bad things, and it prevents our own immune system from even interacting with them. The analogy I've used hundreds of times, I think you know where I'm going with this, is let's say that we weren't recording a podcast and I came over to your office and I set up a volleyball net, right? Which I think we have planned for our next staff meeting. Is that right? Yeah. But if I brought a volleyball net over and I gave you a golf ball and I said, Dr. Gray, throw that golf ball as hard as you can at me, right? Through the volleyball net, right? You are a gram-negative bacteria, sorry, but you are a gram-negative bacteria, and that golf ball is some sort of cellular component like lipopolysaccharide, LPS, that you're going to throw at me. And as the immune cell, I'm on the other side of our gut cell wall. That's what the volleyball net is. The volleyball net is our gut cell wall. I'm on the other side waiting to get information. And so if you take that golf ball and you just throw it as hard as you can and you hit me, I'm going to have an inflamed reaction.
It's going to get through the net. Yeah.
Yes. It's going to get through the net. It's going to hit me. I'm going to be upset. I'm going to have an inflamed reaction. And then in this scenario, I'm going to alert other immune cells that Dr. Gray is throwing golf balls and we need to do something about it. Right? So what SBIGG does is it's like before you throw that golf ball, I bring up a giant beach ball and I take glue or I take duct tape or something and I just wrap it all the way around that. And now we have this much, much, much larger thing that I'm asking you to fit through this little volleyball net. And I say, okay, Dr. Gray, go ahead, throw that beach ball at me. What's going to happen?
I can try, but it's not going to get through.
It's not going to get through, right? It's just not going to get through. So that volleyball net's our gut cell. When that SBIGG, that beach ball is present and it sticks to that golf ball can't hit me. I'm protected, right? So what SBIGG does is it shields our body. It shields our immune system from golf balls, if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yes. So I tell patients, well, A, they can take this daily just to help support their immune system. B, if they get sick, like have a virus or whatnot, this is going to reduce the duration of that.
Yeah.
But C, if we're intentionally killing off pathogens, like let's say we put patients on our bacteria yeast cleanse,
Yeah.
right? As we're killing off bacteria and yeast, whatnot, those are going to emit shrapnel, particles, whatnot,
Yeah.
right? That can interact with our immune system, and which we don't want to have happen. So SBIgG is going to bind all that stuff. So the way I describe this to patients is more of a pathogen binder per se.
Yeah.
So that we can literally poop out the pathogens, their byproducts, whatnot, right? So that those don't interact with our immune system, which is why this is so important for autoimmune diseases. Every patient with an autoimmune disease, even if it's Hashimoto, should be taking SBIgG. It's just an awesome product. I haven't had anyone ever react to it. It comes in a powder or a capsule. If you have a beef allergy, it comes from beef, you shouldn't take it. But other than that, I see really no other caution or concern with taking it. We give it to kids even. I've seen a lot of children with eczema, just various rashes just clear up taking this. Because again, it's lessening any sort of stress on the immune system. It's binding gunk so we can excrete that gunk. So it's very helpful. I really like this product.
And the cool thing about SBIgG coming from that company is it is a serum-derived immunoglobulin product, which means that it does not come from dairy. This is a dairy-free, and it's actually the highest concentration of immunoglobulins gram per gram that you can put into a dietary supplement. It's a very high concentration of IgGs, completely removing any potential triggers, because normally these IgGs are coming from milk sources. They're coming from something called colostrum, right? So if you've heard of colostrum, this is essentially what this is, but it's a lot more because it's dairy-free and has a much higher concentration. It's a fantastic raw material.
And I believe it has been well studied in at least 40 human clinical trials.
At least, yeah. I believe there's 44 human clinical trials now for a wide array of patient types. Wide array.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. We love this product. For years, I think for gut health, patients just knew, oh, take probiotics, take some glutamine. And there's just so much more we can do now. And this is just another layer I think is really important. Okay. Now
this is one where I've probably heard, if I was to say the most life-changing stories from individuals who have had, 10 plus loose bloody stools a day and able to resolve that by taking SBIgG. Those patients, that it's not fun. If you're listening and that's you, this is something that's super benign, super safe to take. It stays in the lumen, does not absorb, does not interact with any medication, does not interact with anything else. It's a very safe thing to try. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, now we can move on to thyroid complex, which does have some selenium that we were just talking about. It does have some N-acetyl cysteine, which we were just talking about. And then it also has some herbs. So I'm trying to remember what specifically is in this. I believe it's ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha, Google resin, complete turmeric matrix, which is our turmeric extract. Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, I literally wanted to go into turmeric next. So maybe let's just stop for a moment and talk about why this turmeric is so different. And complete, and then we'll talk about why it can help the thyroid and the other ingredients in here too. And so just for the listeners also, our turmeric product is called Complete Turmeric Complex. So we're kind of talking about the thyroid complex here, but also the Complete Turmeric Complex. So let's go turmeric for a second.
Yep. We'll talk about turmeric and then we'll loop it back and I'll kind of connect the dots a little bit. But you guys, if you're listening to this and you take supplements, you've probably heard of turmeric to some capacity, right? If you've been in the supplement world, you're definitely familiar with turmeric. The reason we love turmeric is curcuminoids, those compounds that are found within turmeric, are some of the most potent and natural anti-inflammatories that we can have in our body, right? But the problem is that our body does not like curcuminoids. It does not like to absorb them. It does not like to have them in our body. It metabolizes them very, very, very quickly, and then they flush out of our system relatively fast, right? And so there's been a lot of companies that have tried to bypass this problem by adding on different things to those complexes or to those turmeric extracts.
Like black pepper. I mean, we can just be blunt. Yeah.
Oh, we will. Yeah, we will. I name them all. We got micelles, phospholipids, nanoparticles. I mean, we can make a long list. Nanoparticles I've seen even for some turmeric products. Black pepper is a huge one. What these are doing is I essentially call these quote unquote bioavailability enhancers. Right? Is that these companies hypothetically are thinking that if we can attach something or wrap it in something or put something else with it to basically get it in, to force it in, to shove it into our body, that it's going to go and be in a higher amount, and therefore we're going to see better outcomes. Right? Black pepper, what that does, if people are curious, is it actually can open up our tight junctions a little bit, which is counterintuitive to what we just talked about. It can actually slow down something called cytochrome P450, which is an enzyme responsible for detoxification in your liver. So it basically tries to get as much not black pepper, but it tries to get as much turmeric into our system and then slow down the body's ability to metabolize it. But that also affects everything else. Everything else that's going to get in your system and all the other stuff that your body has to detoxify is going to be affected by that. And so the main point of this, and what I'm getting at, is that all of this is hypothetical. That if we're going to put turmeric into a liposome or put turmeric into a nanoparticle or to put it into a micelle or whatever, right? Pick your favorite. Is that it's hypothetical, assuming that if we get it in, it's going to work better. But there's over 8,000 peer-reviewed published studies in PubMed and CBI with curcumin in the title. I've read all of them. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a lot of them. And there are currently zero. There's not one that shows an increase in clinical trials and clinical outcomes with real live patients. What they're testing primarily is if we give them these technologies, do they get more curcumin? Yes. But it does not lead to a benefit within the body. It does not mean that if you have an inflammatory condition, that it's going to increase your anti-inflammatory capacity. And so that's a long explanation, long background, but what ours is it's the complete matrix is what we call it. And so it's everything that nature gave us for that root, right? And so that root, that turmeric root, has fats, it has proteins, it has those oils as part of that fats. Yep. It has over 230 compounds that are naturally found in that root that we want to include in this product, because if you look at the way that turmeric interacts with our body, it interacts with those same dendritic cells that we just talked about to reduce inflammation. Does curcumin get into our system and have some benefit within the body? Absolutely. But where we see majority of the anti-inflammatory capacity is by interacting with our own GI tract. And so I said that there's no studies that showed improved clinical outcomes, as you guys can imagine, drum roll, right? Is that our product does have human clinical data that supports that when we use this in real life patients. One of my favorites is with rheumatoid arthritis patients, reducing rheumatoid factor. It reduces erythrocyte sedimentation rate. Yep. C-reactive protein. These are all inflammatory markers that we look at for patients with rheumatoid arthritis. And so when we can reduce those, we're reducing it. We're actively and effectively reducing inflammation.
So what you're saying is that for all these years, because I was kind of like shock and awe when you guys explained this to me years ago. But what you're saying is, so for all these years, it was hypothesized that by putting turmeric with black pepper, or in this, I can't say these other versions, right? Essentially, supposedly we were increasing absorption of turmeric. And while you could measure that was happening, it wasn't actually reducing inflammation in the body. But by using the full turmeric complex, then not just, how do you say it? Do you say curcuminoids? Am I saying that right?
Curcuminoids,
Not just the most popular part of turmeric and not putting it with black pepper, but using the proteins, the oils, all these other natural compounds in the plant. What that's essentially doing, we're not increasing absorption. We want the turmeric to stay in the gut, since that's where the majority of our immune system is, that you just mentioned. And by keeping the turmeric in the gut, we actually are reducing systemic inflammation. We actually are seeing CRP and SED, these markers reduce. Just kind of like just mind blowing for me, because that's kind of contrary to what I had caught in years past.
And a lot of people have too. It's something that we've been trying to fix for a while. I know Dr. Tom Williams, who's our former VP of Science, this has apparently been a big gripe of his for a while, is that there's no data to support the use of any of those. We have not used black pepper. We've used high concentration turmeric. We've had, 95, 98% turmeric products before. Yeah, but we have not added black pepper or any other technology because the data does not support it.
Sure. Well, I will tell you that my patients like this product. They absolutely feel like, oh my gosh, I ache less. Like, this is actually working for menstrual cramps, for joint pain. Like, it's even great for brain health. Yes. This is an awesome turmeric product. So complete turmeric complex it is. So, this exact turmeric, ingredient is found in the thyroid support complex. So let's go back to that. So thyroid support complex has turmeric, and then it also has, let's speak to ashwagandha and the gogol resin.
Yeah. So ashwagandha also acts as an adaptogen, which I believe we talked about, it seems like hours ago now.
We opened the podcast with ashwagandha, I think.
Ashwagandha is a fantastic adaptogen. And because without getting too deep down the rabbit hole again, you can't talk about your thyroid pathways, your HPT axis, without talking about your HPA axis. And we're talking about adrenal health simultaneously here, because cortisol in different amounts and different pathways will affect the body's ability to convert T4 to T3, and then can actually increase conversion rates from T3 to RT3, which is inactive thyroid hormone. And so if our cortisol is out of whack, what's going to happen is our thyroid hormones are going to suffer as a result. And so ashwagandha is in there as an adaptogen. Guggul resin slows down conversion rates from T3 to RT3. And then the rest of that product, what we're trying to do is actually provide some hepatic support, provide some liver support. And the reason is, and you can speak more on this too, is that our body does a lot of that conversion. Most people don't realize this, of T4 to T3. A lot of that is dictated by the liver or happens directly at the site of the liver. It's not happening in your thyroid gland itself. It's actually happening elsewhere in your body.
Yep. Yep. This is an awesome product. I will also say just ashwagandha alone, I've done some just trials on myself where when I take ashwagandha at night, I'll check my free T3, like with it in my body or without. And I think ashwagandha really can raise thyroid function about 20%. That's kind of what I'm seeing in my patients and even in my own levels. So just that ingredient alone, but this is a great synergistic blend. So love that product. Okay. We're coming to a close here. We've talked about a lot of products. Funny, we're losing track, but I want to end with virus support because this is also a product we've talked about in past episodes in more detail. Briefly just mention why this product, I keep saying, why is this product important? Why is this product important? They're all important, but this one specifically, when we're faced with immune challenges, is also very helpful. So let's kind of wrap up the show with virus support.
We made it. We don't have anything Z. We could talk about Z-binder.
Well, we did. We talked about EnviroBind. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yep. So virus support. What we're talking about here is we're talking about something, and I'm not talking about any specific viruses because I don't want to, but we're not talking about any specific viruses, but we're talking about virus support. We're talking about when we get challenged by something, what can we take? Hey, I got sick. We all know what this feels like. We've been sick since we were kids, right? My mom used to rub the Vicks Vapor Rub and she had her remedies and there's all sorts of stuff we did as kids, right? But we all know what it feels like to get sick. Is that your sinuses start to hurt, you get a headache, your ears hurt, maybe your throat starts to feel a little bit scratchy, you're tired for no reason, right? You know that something is happening. So what we want to do with virus support is get some immediate and acute support on board right now so we can help mitigate and eliminate future challenges or that challenge that's happening right in that moment. And so what we have here, elderberry, which a lot of people are probably really familiar with, elderberry, Echinacea astragalus are kind of the main herbal raw materials that we're talking about. And then we have really high doses of things like zinc, vitamin A, which our body needs in the short term in order, this is not a long-term product, but our body needs those in the short term to be able to basically go after viruses, to actually get our immune cells acting right and actually go after viruses directly. And so what these herbs do, the elderberry, the Echinacea astragalus, is they actually stimulate production of our own CD4 and CD8 cells. The same cells we talked about with mitochondrial complex. This product basically gives our immune system a kick in the butt and says, hey, let's go. We're at 80% right now, just kind of hanging out. We need to be at 125%, at least for the next week, to make sure that whatever viruses are being created in our body, our immune system is just going after them, just waging war and getting after them.
Sure. So how do we take this product?
So we're going to do it. I didn't know if you were talking outside.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to load this up immediately. Like the second you start feeling like this is a great thing to order today and have it in your medicine cabinet and just keep it on you because you never know when you're going to get sick. But this is a great thing that the second we start experiencing symptoms, 2 capsules every hour for 6 hours. I know it sounds like a lot, but we want to set a timer on your phone, right? If you go to bed and you start doing it at night because like, I don't feel good, just continue in the morning. You don't have to wake up throughout the night, but I have been asked that before. But what you want to do is you want to just start taking 2 capsules every hour for 6 hours, and then you are good. We want to use this as something to basically, again, kick our immune system in the butt and say, hey, we got to go. We got to go now because there's a problem, and we want to load up on these things and let them do their job.
Yay, yes. And I tell patients we even have little blister packs of this. So as you're getting sick, if you want to just start with a little blister pack, take a couple every hour, and you can pair this with the immune support product, with more vitamin D, with silver, right, sinus support, whatever you need. I mean, we really can help just strategize with patients what they need when they feel like they're coming down with something. So as you heard from this long recording, there's a wealth of benefits from supplements. And so I have to thank you, Thomas, for coming on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
This probably won't be the last time I ask you to come on the show. This
I'm
is a
trying to
very,
keep my record as the most interviewed guest. So I think
yeah,
so. It was,
you're gonna be hard to beat. Yeah.
yeah,
So for the listeners, this is such a long recording. I'm sure I'm going to space this likely into 3 episodes because we have over
yeah.
3 hours worth of information here. But
Wow. Okay.
I didn't want to skip over anything either. You know, I wanted to go through supplements A to Z. So thank you again, Thomas, for coming on and bearing
Thanks
with
for
me.
having me.
You're always so much fun to talk to, and you have great analogies. So this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. I had a great time.